Hello and welcome everybody to the next 365 streams to learn art professionally. We're on day 2. And we're gonna be learning more shapes. Now, as you might remember, we did shapes last time, but shapes can't exactly be learnt in a day, really. So, because we can't learn the fundamentals in just one day, we're gonna drill them and look at all the resources we can find online for when we start. So, last time, let's go ahead and proceed. Let's hide that for now. And let's try to remember what we'll be doing here. So the start itself, I'll try to remember what we're doing. So for today, our main mission essentially is to try to find work as an environmental concept artist. Or as a illustrator. To be able to get that, to be able to go for environmental concept art and illustration, our main goal should be to get a portfolio. So to be able to get that portfolio goal, what we're gonna be doing is we're going to sharpen up our skills with our fundamentals. So for today, what we're gonna focus on are shapes. So as we remembered last time, we were watching Marco Bucci, and what he said about shapes was about merging shapes. So under what Marco Bucci said was, we will merge portions of shadow, portions of light, and simplify our drawing in that manner. We don't let light shapes clutter the dark side of the painting, nor do we let dark shapes clutter the light side of the painting. So we'll be simplifying with merging shapes. And that's using light and shadow to merge the shape. So the less shapes we use, the less cluttered the painting is with the shapes, the better off the painting will be. We can use use the shadow and the light to merge shapes to simplify the painting. So it's not looking chaotic. Alright, so for today, I thought maybe it would be a good idea to take a look at Modern Day James, because he has a couple of things to share about shapes, but maybe we won't stop with him. We'll probably end up looking at more creators and what they have to say about the fundamentals in shapes. So let's put a cap on the music for now and focus on our tutorial.
On this channel, we've spent a lot of time talking about linear perspective, which is how objects foreshorten into the distance. However, there are many other aspects to a piece that contribute to the illusion of depth. Overlapping shapes is one of the best ways to create depth because it tells the viewer that objects must have a distance between them in order for them to overlap visually. Another way that artists create depth is by utilizing the phenomena of atmospheric perspective. Now that might sound complicated, but essentially, as objects go further in the distance, they decrease in both their color saturation and their contrast. Another way to reinforce the perception of depth is by having a strong graphic read, or the juxtaposition of light and dark shapes. Having a strong graphic read not only makes the painting more interesting, but it adds clarity and makes it much easier to understand. The last point I want to bring up is a good contrast of shapes. While this doesn't always contribute to the perception of depth, it really contributes to a good composition. Shapes can demonstrate contrast in both their size and complexity, and oftentimes when drawing the environment, you want to simplify shapes as much as you can, because there's simply too much detail to try to capture it all.
Alright, so let's go back to his main notes. We haven't done an episode on linear perspective just yet. Though it's not my first time to deal with perspective, but since we're reviewing the fundamentals, essentially, just to review for myself as well, what linear perspective is what linear perspective is when we have a vanishing point along the horizon line. Shapes get smaller and smaller as they go further and further away from us, essentially, right? So it's one of the most simple types of perspective. Overlapping shapes makes for interesting compositions, details and picture. That's essentially what most scenery is like, right? Shapes overlapping each other again and again to create something complex and interesting. The third one we're looking at is atmospheric perspective, where or it's also called atmospheric haze, where if you look out into a scenery in real life, you'll notice that the things really far away, first of all, will lose contrast, so the details kind of start to disappear. It'll lose color saturation, so instead of this vivid green you'd see on the leaf that's right beside you, it turns into a more, it falls into the gray area, and it kind of lightens up as well as the object goes further and further away from you. So that's what we're kind of looking at with atmospheric perspective. The graphic read, I believe, is similar to what Marco Bucci was talking about last episode, where we're looking at the dark shapes and the light shapes uh, contrasting against each other, and creating the image either simple or complex. And then the contrast of shapes is what I believe he'll be explaining more in detail today over here. So let's continue with his lesson.
Shapes as much as you can, because there's simply too much detail to try to capture it all. So let's take a look at some amazing paintings by Edgar Payne. If we separate each of these elements of the painting into shapes, we'll see a masterful execution of each of those qualities I just discussed. Firstly, there's a very large contrast in the size of the shapes, the foreground shape being the largest, the midground being the medium-sized shape, and the background shape being smallest. The foreground shape clearly overlaps the midground, and they both overlap that small background shape.
So large, medium,
Another amazing
small.
thing that happens in this piece is that it draws your eyes into the canvas to follow this path. Even though we can't see the path near the background, the orientation of that small background shape implies the change in path direction.
Right.
In this second painting, you'll see that the largest shape is placed in the midground, with our medium-sized shape placed in the background and the small shape in the foreground.
The
And
shapes
once again, you can
overlap.
see that these shapes are contributing to building a path. The ground plane shape takes up the entirety of the canvas. at the
So
bottom,
you see, even the
and
shadow
then
part in
rapidly
this front
foreshortens
part
around
is a
the
shape.
lower third of the painting. That small sliver of the ground plane between the midground and the foreground clearly shows that the path is once again twisting and turning. The graphic read in this painting is also very apparent, as you can see that constant alternation between dark and light shapes.
Right.
Nicolas Bouvier, the concept artist known as Sparth, discusses looking at landscapes as looking at a series of flat shapes that are stacked in front of each other, kind of like a puppet show. When we see it from the outside in, it just looks like a series of papers stacked in front of each other, but from the perspective of the camera, it works together to create a two-dimensional image that has depth. Thinking about landscapes this way makes it a lot easier to tackle scenes that might have a lot of complex detail.
Right. So it's like when we normally paint in layers. Because a common
As we saw in
technique,
the Edgar Payne paintings,
Yeah, let's
each
pause
of these had a very clearly defined
a common technique that I would normally do is I would cut after making my plotting my, let's say, napkin sketch. I'd use the lasso tool to lasso out my main foreground, midground, background elements, or any more elements that need to be separated from those three steps. In general, that's what I would be doing. So I believe this process is what he's saying is a little similar to what's normally done. So let's get back to the lesson.
path. When creating a composition of your own, it's important to consider the fact that your camera is positioned at eye level, which means that these ground plane shapes are going to foreshorten very quickly. When creating these compositions, if your ground plane doesn't foreshorten, it can really flatten the image and break the illusion of depth. There are, of course, instances in which the ground plane won't foreshorten, and typically that's if you place the camera directly above looking down. Or if your ground plane shape starts to go up, it might indicate that there is a change in the elevation. That being said, these tapering shapes will always have the effect of bringing your eye into the canvas.
Okay, yeah, so let's pause again. So pretty much we're looking at foreshortening, which has to do with, like was mentioned earlier, the linear perspective. Like we see a road that gets narrower and narrower the further it gets from us, and if we are unable to execute that in our scene, then we break this illusion that we're trying to create. So actually, let's go ahead and take some notes for this. So just so we have something to review later on. So we're looking at foreground, midground, and background. Together, separate each on a separate plane of the box. So, as he explained earlier, we have a scene, a fake scene, where the foreground sits here, for example, one shape like that. The midground sits at another portion of the box, and then the background sits at the very tail of the box. Like so. Say midground, and background sits at the tail of the box. And then the thing that sews this whole piece together is the ground plane, or the floor, that is supposed to appropriately foreshorten with our angle, with our camera angle. So be that a road that sews the whole thing together, just adds that layer of believability. So we have, it must be in proper perspective. And I believe the same kind of effect can be achieved by doing the correct perspective for various elements in your painting, right? Once you've decided, okay, we're going for 1 or 2 point perspective. If a tree in the foreground, let's say, is yay tall, with the correct perspective going in, a tree in the midground should be much smaller, like yay tall only, to match the perspective. And the tree in the background should be tiny, the tiniest little tree. Let's do it in red. The tree in the foreground should be this tall, midground would be this tall, and the background would be almost just a dot, because it follows perspective. I think it does the same thing as what we're looking over here at the ground plane, right? Yeah. Yeah, so let's get back to the lesson. Actually, enough of me talking. Let's figure the lesson back out. So let's bring this back and let's listen together. So
another effect of this foreshortening near the horizon line is that small changes in the distance on the canvas will imply large distances in three-dimensional space. You'll see here that, even though the foreground and midground shapes are pretty close on the canvas, they will look somewhat distant from each other due to the overlap and the tapering of the path. Look at a few more paintings before we start doing some compositions of our own. Each of these, you'll see all of the elements we discussed so far.
Wait,
big contrast.
Kinda flew over my head. Let's try that again. Horizon.
Another effect of this foreshortening near the horizon line is that small changes in the distance on the canvas will imply large distances in three-dimensional space. You'll see here that, even though the foreground and midground shapes are pretty close on the canvas, they will look somewhat distant from each other due to the overlap and the tapering of the path.
Right. So it is the same thing where
Look at a few more paintings before we start compositions of our own.
It won't, because we're doing things in perspective. If something falls on a different line of the perspective, like if something falls on a different line of the perspective, then it's assumed to be either pushed forward or back, depending where on the line it is. So it was the same as earlier. So yeah, let's get back to looking at these paintings.
Each of these, you'll see all of the elements we discussed so far. A big contrast of large, medium, and small shapes. A very obvious graphic read of light and dark. a path for your eyes to take, a
Hmm.
lot of overlapping forms.
Yeah, maybe that's something that I've been forgetting in my pieces as well. Let's go. Let's get back to the notes. I want to take that. Uh, so foreground, midground, background over here, and we have it sewn together by perspective. Strong use of light and shadow is something definitely Marco mentioned, but I keep forgetting a path for the eye to follow. For the eye to follow. Maybe it's something that I have been forgetting in my most recent pieces, and something I gotta relearn again. I'm glad this was brought up. I'll be sure to take notes for this one. Alright, let's get back to the lesson. Sorry for pausing and everything. I'm sure that's not the most optimal way to view the lesson, but definitely go check out, if you want to see that lesson without me mumbling about, go check out Modern Day James on YouTube. This lesson is Composition 1, Understanding Shapes. So anyway, let's get back to it. Let's learn.
Simplification of complex details. Simplification of detail is so important when you're doing large-scale subjects like this. Try to find the essence of a shape rather than the exact contour of it. You'll see in my following demonstrations that even subjects with a lot of complex architectural detail can be simplified to just a few shapes and values. My good friend Eitan Zana is a master on the subject, and he's got some great videos on it if you'd like to check that out as well. The link to his Gumroad channel will be down in the description below. Alright, so now I'm going to try sketching some of these environments myself.
Okay, let's take a look.
I'm creating that list of those 5 features once again just so we have that in our mind. As far as the values go, I'm just using a handful, maybe 4 or 5. I can make my hatching less dense as objects go further in the distance to emulate that atmospheric perspective.
Alright, so reviewing again, right? Our linear perspective are shapes that do overlap. The values will be desaturated, lighter, less contrast as it goes further in the back. The graphic read of light, dark, and light. The size of the shapes. Alright.
Since we're going to be drawing these environments rather than painting them, we can also add some visual interest in the brushwork. The direction of our hatching and our pen strokes can be used to create texture. With my buildings, which are all standing straight up, I use a vertical hatching to place in my shapes of value. Whereas with the brush here in the front, I'm using these angled brush strokes to give me a more chaotic look that's indicative of the overall texture. You also want to keep in mind the direction of the light and try to emulate that in the brushwork as well. If you've taken a look at Scott Robertson's How to Render or my video on the subject, that'll give you an idea of how you can learn to cast shadows. Once you understand that, then it's a lot easier to figure out where your shapes of shadow are going to be located.
Of course, we're gonna hit those points as well in a future episode, likely when we move on in our learning. But for now, we'll try to focus heavily on just getting the right shapes, good shapes.
As far as the architecture, I just lightly sketch in the silhouettes without any indication of the light direction. However, once everything's set in stone, I can then hatch in my shapes of value. And since most of this architecture is in the distance, there's actually not too much linear perspective that we have to contend with.
So right now what I'm seeing is he's gonna go for a big old light shape.
At this distance, I'm just treating the windows as small rectangular shapes of dark.
Right.
Because if you imagine standing this far away from the subject, you wouldn't be able to articulate all of that detail in the architecture. Also,
Right.
while all of the
sorry, I had to pause. So basically, yeah, it's that same thing where Marcos, like, you can simplify it, and remember what I said about perspective. Things far away doesn't have that much detail to the eye anyway. And like what Marco said, we can simplify it by kind of mushing the details together, letting the brain figure it out. So from what I can see from this, at this point at least, there's a big old light shape on the top where I assume the sky is gonna be. This dark shape again on the middle where this architecture is. A light shape near the valley under it where the light I assume hits, and another dark shape at the bottom. So he's going, right now we can already see the light dark light on the graphic read is going quite okay. So let's see where he takes this.
Horizontal lines on that architecture in the distance are perfectly horizontal and not angling back towards a right or left vanishing point. You can tell that the plane is changing based on those very hard-edged shapes of shadow. Drawing in this manner becomes a lot more like a painting because you're just thinking about abstract shapes of light and dark. You can see that doing a bunch of thumbnails like this makes it a lot easier to transition to a painting. And in fact, when
Yeah, I had to pause there. I will talk a little bit about thumbnailing. It's a common technique that was drilled down when I started. Is mostly people shrink their canvas super tiny, or draw in tiny squares, and it's something we would practice just to understand better composition. So when you thumbnail with just dark and light values without much color, you can kind of see, wow, is this visually striking from a distance, or can I understand really what is going on based on the thumbnail alone? It forces you to think creatively about your subject matter as well. Let's go back to our Photoshop. Sorry, going on a tangent here, but it is worth noting. So let's hit the Photoshop. For example, it was something I forgot who taught it exactly, but it was something like this, right? So you had we'd be making like 6 boxes or so, but for now let's just make 3, right? That's kind of shit, but whatever. Let's just let's pretend this is the same, and we'd be drawing in our thumbnails. So for example, we wanted to draw a house on a hill. Sometimes we'd be normally tempted to go, hey, okay, house on a hill. The first thing we think of is house straight in the center in the hill. But then, as we're forced to do the same thing again, maybe we might try something more interesting. Maybe the hill is off in a distance and maybe curved like this. So now we have something more visually interesting than the first one, and then we're forced to do something complex again. So what if, let's say, this is a dark shape, and then the hill is a light shape, and then the house is just sitting over here, for example, still on the hill, for example here, so on the light shape, and then there's more darkness up here, so the hill isn't exactly the highest thing, and we're getting more and more interesting compositions, just because we're actually trying to think of anything else other than what first pops into our mind. It helps us decide, and if we can get a clear read from the thumbnail, we're pretty much guaranteed a clean finished piece of work afterwards. So that's pretty much what the thumbnailing is, and it's something done commonly enough. Anyway, let's get back to the lesson. Sorry for going on the whole thumbnail tangent. It is worth mentioning though, and it's worth it for me to remember to do it again, because I'm gonna be real with you boys, I've been neglecting to do it. Alright, let's get back to it.
whenever I have done landscape painting, which is not very often, I will start by blocking in these shapes of shadow as one solid mass of value. To further push that sense of atmospheric perspective, I start increasing the hatching on those foreground buildings, and darkening up the values of all the objects in the foreground.
Right. We did discuss that. So, let's go back and take a look if, remember what he mentioned earlier where the ground plane should indicate, before shortened to the perspective and should indicate things moving further back. And he did mention that if something is higher up, we'll see the ground plane show that. So I think from what we can see here, the ground plane starts on the right, and we can tell that as it goes further to the left, things are going further and further away. But we can also tell this is a hill because it opens up instead of squishing down. So I think he's using that as well. So yeah, he's just pushing the details.
Alright, let's move on to another sketch. This
Okay.
one I'll start by blocking in just an abstract shape of shadow.
Yeah, this is what we would normally do.
I like to use vertical hatching to indicate a large shape of value, because at a distance your eye has a tendency to blend it together. The reflection in the water vertically mirrors those shapes of value. And at this far away, the architecture in the background really just boils down to a few shapes of light and dark. As I mentioned earlier, trying to boil your sketches down to these shapes of value like this is really going to work well when you decide to transition to painting, because you're going to approach it in much the same manner as just these groups of light and dark. I'm going to draw another thumbnail, and I'm really going to simplify the architecture quite a bit on this one. Camera here is positioned a bit closer than in the previous ones, so you'll get a bit more linear perspective and curving of those ellipses towards the top of the building.
Yeah, we ought to see that linear perspective. That
Alright, and we'll
shadow
do one more
shape
thumbnail for good measure.
in the left.
Keep in mind that you want to draw what you're seeing and not what you think is there. From a very young age, we have this tendency to remember things as icons, rather than actually what we're seeing, which is just abstract shapes of value. A good way to practice this is to go outside or look at photos and try converting them into just a few values.
Right. Maybe we should look at some photos later for practice. I'll be sure to do that.
So as I finish this sketch up, I just want to let you know what's going to happen in the next parts of these series. In part 2, we'll be talking about the mood that compositions can create and a bit about lenses. And in part 3, we'll try to tie all this together by doing some visual storytelling, and we'll even take some of these to a painted finish.
That'll be interesting. Alright. Oh yeah, so he had this whole bit. It's really funny. I definitely urge anyone who's looking at it to watch it, because it's a hilarious bit that he did in the beginning. But of course I won't spoil it by showing it here, but it's worth watching. Go check out Marco Bucci, not Marco Bucci, Modern Day James, on his video composition 1, Understanding Shapes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice those napkin sketches that he was doing essentially, right? Let's get this video tutorial out here. Let's put some music back on and let us continue. Alright, so let's pull up a fresh a fresh sheet here. Let's yeah, maybe we'll start with white, although that's not normally what I would start with, but yeah, let's go completely fresh white. I'll just use the standard, maybe I'll use my chalk brush or something. Hope my audio's okay. I hope the music's not really drowning out what I'm saying. But anyway, yeah, let's proceed with these napkin sketches. Let's do 6 for now as practice. Let's get our brush size down to make the line, and then let's do these napkin sketches. Alright, that didn't work out. Alright, something like this. Alright, so let's proceed with our napkin sketches. So before we proceed, actually, let's review what we were able to do, learn previously. So from Marco, we were simplifying and merging shapes, and now from Modern Day James, we're understanding the 5 rules, which is the one is the linear yeah, let's remember it. Let's seriously try to actually fucking review, right? One would be the linear perspective, so let's just make little drawings to signify it. I think it's a great way to learn, is to write it down. Linear perspective. Shapes get smaller as they get further. Overlapping shapes was definitely one. The light, dark light. Yeah, atmospheric perspective. So let's just mix it into this drawing. The one closest will be dark. The one kind of middle will be mid, and the furthest would be, so less contrast, less saturation at the far away things, more contrast, more saturation in the close things. And then the light, dark light, and finally what was it? Let's fucking go back. Let's straight up, we have to learn it. We can't forget it. Let's go back and take a look. Because maybe that last point is super important, right?
That might sound complicated, but essentially, as objects go further in the distance, they decrease in both their color saturation and their contrast. Another way to reinforce the perception of depth is by having a strong graphic read, or the juxtaposition of light and dark shapes. Having a strong graphic read not only makes the painting more interesting, but it adds clarity and makes it much easier to understand. Last point I want to bring up is a good contrast of shapes. While this doesn't always contribute to the perception of depth, it really contributes to a good composition. Shapes can demonstrate
Right, so it's contrast of shapes.
contrast in both their size and complexity, and oftentimes when drawing the environment, you want to simplify shapes as much as you can.
Alright, okay. I think I have an idea. It's just essentially not copy pasting the same shape over and over again. Although I can see some situations where it might work, but then again, you'll still be merging shapes to get these overall. Yeah. to get these overall amalgamations of shapes, so contrast of shapes. But that's more like visual interest and not really much to do uh, with the illusion of depth. So yeah, okay, contrast of shapes. So let's simplify it with a, make it a circle. Oh Jesus. Make it a circle versus a triangle, right? So there's a contrast. So it's our perspective, our atmospheric perspective, our light dark light, our overlapping of shapes, and contrast of shapes. Alright, so let's get back to these napkin sketches of ours, shall we? Let's put some music back on and let's proceed. So in the beginning, yeah, let's just draw some shapes and just put them out. Was on the wrong fucking layer. Right, so like this. Some shapes here. Let's make the horizon line somewhere over there. Something like this maybe, yeah. And then just leave a small shape there to indicate like this massive thing on the top here. So what we have is, yeah, something like this, right? So we kind of sort of do have a path, and let's really drill down that we do have a path by darkening. So I'm thinking light wants to come out from over here, right? So we can make these upward shapes kind of light. These shapes. And what is he saying with his brushwork? Let's just try to follow it now. Normally I don't do these brushwork things because I color it in anyway, and I try to render them down. But since we're doing napkin sketches, let's just do it, right? So high contrast, just do this really sharp striking stuff, and then of course this is gonna be in light more so. So let's just weakly cover this area, right? It's in a cast shadow in that area. And then this area can be in the light, right? And then it's gonna have even lighter, less contrast shading over here. And then maybe we'll take the whites and brush them back into the areas that it should, like maybe have a bounce light. Something like that. So we know there's texture, and just really dig in that this is close, because text is gonna be harsh shadows, right? Harsh shadows. And the shadows here less harsh, and even less so on that other side. And then it's just his straight up lighter on the furthest side away. So yeah, we have the overlapping shapes, atmospheric perspective, our ground has a path for the eye to follow. What else? Light dark light is definitely present. Shape contrast, well, yeah, we use very different looking shapes, I'd say. What do you boys think? You think this is successful? Oh, hey yo, thank you for dropping by. Path for the eye to follow. Overlapping shapes. Yeah, I think we got it for this one. Let's try another sketch. So let's actually drill down some perspective here. So I'm gonna pretend the horizon line is here. And just do some perspective. And let's block this in as its own shape. Maybe we'll create some architecture. I'm not quite sure what I'm going for just yet, but let's figure it out. Maybe a building or so. Not sure what this is. And let's create a couple more buildings here. Or yeah, let's make, okay, I kind of see what I want to do, and this works. So let's pretend what we have here is some sort of table. Alright, and these are soda cans, and it's definitely gonna get dark treatment, right? Dark. Is gonna be in the shadow. This whole thing is shadow, essentially. And then right, so these soda cans are on this table. Maybe I'll darken them a tad bit more. And then we have a series of bushes or trees or whatever this is. And I'm forgetting my fucking brushwork because I never do it really. Let's just show that these are chaotic and tree-like and bush. That's a little crazy. I don't know if I like that. Anyway, and then let's imply that there's also another table back here, right? Just about perfectly aligned with the horizon line. This table with things on it as well, right? There are some shadow, and this will cast the shadow down. Maybe like this. Our building just has some shapes or so. It doesn't have to be crazy. Let's do some 1 point. This is kind of high up though, so it's better to give it a little more of a curve. So let's give it some windows, right? And yeah, maybe we'll give it staircase to the guardrails or whatever. Right, so let's give it some guardrails like this. It's a bit above the horizon line, so we're kind of looking above it. Something like that. And then we'll do some lighter shading back there because, again, atmospheric perspective means that's less contrast. That's the problem with this brush though. It's a little, needs to be kind of large if I want to shade things lightly. Maybe that, let's just stick with the brushwork, right? I keep forgetting that that's what we're practicing right now. So let's get this dark brushwork here on our table. Oh, you know what we just did? We just fucking did the same fucking thing we did earlier. That sucks. Let's break the mold. See, this is what I was talking about, why we need to do these. That's a lot more contrast than I wanted. But this is what I was talking about, why we want to do these. Why we want to do these napkin sketches, right? So that we're sure that we don't keep making that same mistake again and again. Maybe that wasn't the best brushwork for it, but whatever. This was okay, but we fell into the same trap of making the exact same goddamn thing on the left. So we'll try to not do that. Okay, we're gonna try something else. Let's be sure to fucking do something else straight up. Okay, this might be interesting. Although we did get the various shapes to overlap and use a lot more shapes that way. So let's try something different with this sketch up here. Yeah, let's do this. So there's a ton of overlap here, so I have to really play with the values hard. Oh, but they're all squiggly squiggles, so probably gonna want to make something striking. Maybe in the furthest distance. So this has, let's just simulate grass with the brushwork, and then let's make that brush smaller and just keep working our way down. Let's do that. Merge these shapes and create this hatchy. And let's just, yeah, probably indicate the trees are contoured with our brushwork or something like that. Sounds good. Right. So essentially I want the horizon line to be up here, so these towers are gonna be squished down. So we know that the light is coming from the left or so. But we did give it way too much dark. Too much shadow. Oh, that's a failure in perspective. So if we want a perspective here, the second tower, if it's just that far away, since it's so extreme, so let's pretend that our vanishing point, our horizon line, is over here, where this dark patch meets this lighter patch over here. If that's the case, if this follows perspective all the way down, it's gonna cut this in half and make it that much smaller. And then take the black brush, just make it a circle like this, and now there's some sort of, oh, let's not forget the perspective even further down, I think. The 3-point perspective is, I guess it's 2-point, it's just down and up. It's insane. Alright. Fair enough. And then let's put brushes, scratchy scratch. Oh wait, maybe we'll get some gray, scratchy scratch this. Same with this one. Just give it some texture. By that logic though, we gotta darken this one a little bit more to fit. Oh, and this is something that I picked up watching, what do you call this, watching I forget what his name was. Like, let me search it real quick. Something I picked up. Let's actually hide. I didn't realize I was still playing here. Something I picked up watching. What was his name? Let me search it up real quick. I'll find him. What was his name? Walid Fighali. He does a lot of work helping people just getting in. His basic tutorials are great, like, because when you start, right, you're painting a lot from imagination. You're not quite sure how to paint something that looks even halfway realistic or acceptable, right? That was a mistake. So Walid Felghali has a bunch of videos that are for free on how to do these, how to paint these certain things that are a little difficult, like painting grass, painting mountains, all this basic stuff that'll really move you forward in your in your in your journey, in your art journey. Is really super great, super helpful videos. He has a proper course in evident design, and he does, for those who are willing to pay for it, or for those who have budget for it. And I think it'd be worth it someday if I get the budget for it. But yeah, he has all these basics on rendering and basic composition, lighting, things like that. He teaches you a lot of things. Teaches you a lot of pitfalls as well that these new artists will get into. So he's very much worth watching. Anyway, it was a trick that was taught by Walid Feghali, where what do you call this? Oh my god, I completely lost my goddamn train of thought. Are you kidding me? It had something to do with the grass. What the hell? That's so fucking embarrassing. I can't. At least I shouted him out. I think that's what matters, right? It was a trick taught by Walid Feghali. I can't remember what I was. There, no, I remember. Right. So, you see here, I purposely left this kind of area a little whitish, a little bare, and it's a trick to fool you into thinking there's some certain depth to the photo, even though there's none, by whiting out or fogging out this contrast point between this portion and this portion. It pushes it further back, is what I'm saying. So, for example, if I didn't do that and I just colored this all in with gray, it'll look very flat and puppeteery. And at least it gives the eye something to latch on. You know what we didn't do for this thumbnail though? We didn't give the eye a path. So there's nothing leading at, it doesn't always have to be a ground plane, essentially, but we want to be led to the towers in the distance, which is ideally our subject. That's the most interesting portion of this thumbnail. So maybe if we can look at the lines, if our lines lead us there. So all these slopes kinda ride us along here and throw us here. So maybe what I'd like to do is, maybe I'd like to extend this tree to point towards the, and this is just some cheeky shit that you can do. I extend this tree to point towards the subject a little more. Same with this tree. Extend it to point inwards to the subject, so the lines that our eyes follow point down into the subject. So anyway we come from the image, we're kind of poured into this subject. But still, maybe I could have done a better job in figuring out the path of the eyes. So let's do the checklist again if we were able to figure it out correctly. So perspective, definitely we got that. Atmospheric perspective, yes. Light, dark, light, I'd like to believe we were able to do that as well. Maybe not that great, actually, now that I think about it, because what we have is dark, lighter, not much punch and content. Depends. I guess it's okay. I guess it's not too bad. Other than the light, dark, light, difference in shapes, triangles, spheres, boxy looking thing. Yeah, I think we're okay. Overlapping shapes, definitely we have that. Alright, so maybe this one is okay, but didn't work too well with 1 or 2 points. Let's keep practicing these thumbnails. Next one. Now this is a point where it gets kind of difficult because I have no idea what to do now. Let's do this. Could be a little risky because we're really working. That's the side perspective end there. Ah, that was a mistake. Let's just build this correctly. I hope I don't sound like shit. My audio, I mean. I hope the music is also audible. Well, we'll have to check the recording for that. Anyway, let's work with this, with what we got. Let's work with what we got. Let's get rid of that. It's kind of worthless. And I guess we'll just follow perspective a bit, like this. Let's kind of not make lines. Let's not get too complex. Not gonna actually draw perspective. We're just gonna follow visually what I think is right. So we can know this is the inside. A temple. Yeah, let's make it something like that. Make some sort of massive church on top of a hill like this, right? Open it up. Opens up to our So why the fuck does this look like shit? Why does this look wrong? Let's try to figure it out. This looks wrong for what reason? I need to figure out. Is it because my initial path does not foreshorten enough? It's possible. Let's take a look. Yeah, let's foreshorten our initial path. Yeah. Bollocks. Basically, I think what was happening was we were not following the foreshortening correctly. Let's try to do that correctly. Should be basically flat at this point, right? Is that even correct? I have no clue. Well, that's why we're doing studies. This should definitely be tiny as fuck though. I guess let me have some water while I think. Yeah, let's think about this. What? Yeah, this kind of looks better actually. So. No, but we are certainly missing some elements like overlapping shapes and stuff. Oh, that can be done with trees though. I forget. So, for example, if this is the doorway and the tree is that comes from here, for example, is this big, right? And a tree, therefore a tree that, if this is a foreshortening point, right, comes from here should be about this big, right? Something like that, right? And if we follow that correctly, going all the way up here, any trees that we have should roughly follow this. Because we're pointing it down into this vanishing point. Same with up here. Actually, it's alright, so now we have our trees. It's, what did he say? He does the vertical hatching for these. So let's just do that. I'm just pressing the, what do you call this, shift key to make the perfect lines, but maybe I shouldn't do that. Let's do some horizontal, light horizontal or diagonal hatching to, yeah, let's do it to match the perspective. Maybe they'll give us a better illusion that we're trying to go for. Yeah, something like that. Maybe. All just pointing towards the vanishing point. The trees can be, you know, let's just describe the form of the hatchwork, I think. Wow, that was garbage. Where's the light coming from, I wonder? Contre-jour. Let's fucking do contre-jour. I love that. Okay, let's do that. For those of you who do not know, right? Contre-jour is a type of lighting situation where an object in the scene blocks the light out, right? And it gives you this almost halo effect for lighting. So let's definitely do that. So what we want is to darken these areas. So essentially, right, wait, let's make this brush smaller so we can actually do it right. Oh yeah, because there would be bounce light. So whenever you think of making a scene like this, it's also time. So my to preface this, my plan was to make contre-jour here. So the house is blocking out most of the light that is being emitted by the sun, for example, in this case. But it doesn't mean the house blots out the entire sun like a lunar eclipse. It's only for this specific area. So we can assume that there's light coming from other places. Because we can assume that, we can assume there's a little bit of bounce light, right? That bounces off the inside of the building that the side of the building that we are standing by, or our camera is behind, right? So the bounce light will illuminate the back of these trees ever so slightly, not crazily, but it'll be slight. The problem is just getting that effect correct. Anyway, so what was I saying? When we think of these types of scenes, right, we'd like to think of them in more how do I say, in a three-dimensional term. Like, think, what would you see if you were on the other side of this wall looking at the trees instead of the building? Or what would you see if you were what would you see if you were from the building looking down at this gate, and you'd imagine how the light would behave in such a manner. So we're going to shade the building out just a tiny bit. Same thing with the hill. Let's shade the hill out a tiny bit. And the reason I'm shading the land like this is just to give the effect that it's flat. Wow, this looks like fucking chaos. Yeah, let's just crosshatch some bushes in. Well, this turned into fucking madness. It's not crazy though, it's not that bad. As long as the bushes follow perspective, right? I think it's fine. Just straight up use black. I'm tired of this one already. Let's just straight up color it black. and then maybe let's nah, that was ugly as hell. That didn't work out. That didn't work out at all. God damn it. Question is why though? Yeah, I failed on this one. I can straight up say. Alright, if that's the case, okay, let's think about it clearly. Why? So we have the dark. Yeah, that's where we failed, I think, because it was supposed to be shapes covering shapes and dark light dark, right? Where we failed that here is, although we have some dark light dark, it's not much of that, and there's not much shapes covering shapes either. Although there is perspective and atmospheric perspective, I think. But you know, that's just why we do these exercises, I guess, because there are a bunch of bits that need to be worked on over and over again. So let's try a different scene, and that's just how it is. We really just gotta do it again, try our best. Yeah, let's try 1 point perspective over here. And maybe a fence pointing to it, and what is this? There's a hill, very nice. This cuts through the points. There we are, that's what we're looking for, right? Implying the distance and something even. Maybe we should bring that horizon line a little lower though. Oops. I'm just darkening it like nobody's business. Because I'm using the fat brush. I'm using a thin brush. Alright. So let's say there. Okay, you see, I almost made a mistake here. So I wanted to, initially, I wanted to draw a fence. You know, just to show that this thing is fenced. But then, when I think about it, look at how the house is oriented. Obviously, a fence won't go crazy high. I was thinking of this, you know, gentle picket fence. But since the house is already sitting on this type of perspective, the picket fence would only be up until here, right? And assuming that this is the same length as this and direction as this, the top of the fence should not be any taller. So the top of the fence would be here at most, right? And that's just how the perspective is. So at least we caught that mistake very early on. So we'll just draw that out. And you know, it's kind of why we do these sorts of studies anyway. I want a couple more overlapping shapes, though it's kind of boring. Yeah, maybe something like this. Let's do a tiny cart. That's a little... cart. I'm not fucking around with 2 points, so 1 point is gonna have to do, boys. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm just trying to guess the... So let's give that contour another shot, right? Let's make it a mountain this time, right? So let's give the contour another shot. Oh, maybe I fucked up. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I don't know what I want. I want to draw a rock. Let's just draw a massive old round rock. I want to draw a round style boulder. To cover this area. What do I want? What do I want? Where do I want the light to strike from? Oh, let's put trees back here. Yeah. Okay, I have an idea for where I want the light to strike from. I want it to come from the left now. So, let's leave this beautiful mountain to bask in the light a bit. Yeah. Have a little contrast. I want everything here to kind of sit in the dark. Let's give this... Guess we have to give this house a door or something. In perspective. You know that perspective dot, we just turned it into a tunnel for no fucking reason. But it's good. That's how these things work, you know. Give him a couple of windows. ugly as hell. Oh well. Let's darken these. I know it's... Alright. Supposed to be straight line hatches for this one, I think. That's what they said, right? Straight line for the architecture. This one, I'll just, it's a rock, right? It's just... I guess we do want to use darkest black here. I'm fucking up this hatch thing so bad. It's definitely something I haven't done before. But, let's clean it up and figure it out from there. Just as long as we get the shape of the rock, it's whatever, right? Since we're looking down at that rock. And then what we want to do is maybe... on the left side of this mountain, right? Oh yeah, definitely. Give a little atmospheric haze to oh yeah, that looks nice. And just leave some hatching. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just gentle hatching on this one as well, right? Should have gone light with this one, like incredibly light. Well, you can do so now though. There, yeah, something like that. So it's not so bad, but it's fairly obvious that now I have to bring everything a little bit darker, and that's just no choice. Man, I've never really been forced to draw in such a manner. It's interesting though. Let's figure the cast shadows of these. Obviously, it was casting a shadow. It'll be casting a shadow this way, right? Should have done it the right way. First time around, oh well. I think we all know this has to be darker over here, right? So let's shit some values on. So it's fairly obvious. It has to be dark as heck. Let's just pour those values on it. Let's clean that out. It actually looks quite nice. Alright. If we're being mindful where the light comes from, then probably want to color this bit in too, right? Yeah, I decided to make the rock into some sort of hay bale so I don't have to fucking explain shit. I'm sure you've all had like hay bales, or you've seen hay bales at least. But in my country, they commonly use a long bamboo stick and just pile the hay along, right? Pile the hay along. So they would commonly do. Maybe it's worth getting a little bit white. Something like that. So the path, check. Atmospheric perspective, check. Different various shapes, check. Light, dark, light, I'd say check. Now that I think of it, maybe not, but so we have one huge, actually the actual foreground is just one big shape, isn't it? Yeah, no, I kind of fudged it. Because ideally, the light. Oh, no. Actually, we're good. So light, sky, and unfortunately, the left side of the mountain becomes light as well. Dark for this mountain, since we drew it almost to look like it's in shadow and it's casting shadow from a direction or so. that direction. Light. This mountain is kind of part of the light anyway. Dark, which is this mountain here, kind of casting a shadow. Light, then dark. So maybe it's halfway passable. Alright. One more, come on, it's practice time. Come on. Gosh, that's rough. This is rough, but you know, we'll keep it going. Last one. Let's actually make it good. Something like this. So we're taking an upwards perspective. Dark. And this is light. Oh, yeah, let's make it covered almost. So there is a cast shadow from somewhere there. Yeah, something. Oh wait, is that even a good idea though? Yes it is, because what we're gonna do is... the brushwork on that was bad, but okay, so what we're gonna do is, to get that light, dark light, right, we're gonna have this pillar on our left cast its own shadow, right? So let's go back to the brush and have some sort of shape like that, right? From the pillar casting its own shadow. On this thing, right? This should be flat. As should this really. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna draw a pillar out here as well. Having the light hit that barely. So now we've convinced ourselves the light is pretty much coming from behind the camera, right? And this is interesting in that manner. Remember what was taught to us about the bottom of these things being angled so that we have a path to follow. Let's grab this, angle the bottom of this, and same with this, angle it over there, and boom. We have our path. Very nice. Such an interesting practice. I'm having a lot of fun actually. It's really forced me to. Yeah, I never should have stopped doing the thumbnails. They're just really great tools. Yeah, let's keep up. Let's just keep working. Of course, we can hatch in and detail this that bit. Just a wee bit, right? That was maybe a mistake. Not sure what happened, boys. It looks like I kinda got lost in the sauce here. Let's think about what happened. I want perspective, which we can have here, at least with the winding road thingy. I want atmospheric perspective, which I think is our biggest struggle right now. Maybe it just means I have to darken everything straight up. Just one hatching darker. This includes the shadows. Including this thing. Even though it's like bathed in light. Gotta darken it up. There. And this thing has to lighten up a wee bit. Because I am straight up losing that atmospheric perspective. So contrast, edge, you'll have to go. Something like that. Just tell me these things are far away. These things, however, are closer by, so I can get that contrast and the edge and everything. Now that I think of it, I think I might have messed up the perspective. Because look at how this is all angled. It's like we're looking down into the canyon. So what kind of self-respecting canyon is being looked down into? Right? And there, we found it. What kind of self-respecting canyon is being looked down into and has a still flat perspective for the rocks behind it, right? That makes no fucking sense. So we'll open this up and actually create the horizon line, which I believe should be somewhere over here. Darken everything out. Maybe not that dark. Maybe a little bit for. Not like this. this. Does the perspective look right? There's we're looking down into a canyon. So the very end of the canyon should be somewhere back there, right? What happens if we do that? Alright, it started off strong, but it's kind of lost its kind of lost its jazz. Let's. I mean, looking at it from let's make it tiny. Yeah, the best one out of all of them is the one on the upper right. Oh. Let's mush these edges. Ooh. Let's mush and muddy these edges down. Yeah, I think that'll help. Because shadows become less and less sharp the further and further away it is from the main source of the shadow, right? It gets blurry. Like when you're standing in front of a flagpole and you look at the shadow and it's like, oh, the shadow's kinda the further away, and the closer you are to the base, you see the shadow much better, but the further you walk away from the base, the shadow just gets more and more blurry and beat up. Let's just try to capture that effect somewhat there. Alright, you know what's bugging me? Because I've oriented, yeah, I think I found it. Because I've oriented this thing straight, the shadows obviously should be straight as well. So let's do some fixing with that. Because I've oriented this bit. Right, so it lies on this flat plane, so it should be oriented flat as well. Alright, and now I've kind of created too harsh an edge. Let's beat the edge down again. Alright, so now we're looking at it, it's still shite. What if we create something like this, right? Alright. Because we're assuming the light is just blasting from this one direction, right? We'll also assume that the tops aren't getting as much light as the side at the moment. I tried darkening the horizon and just make it chaos, so never mind. We're not gonna do that. Was this the right position? Not quite sure. I'm not sure actually. This is all very confusing. Bottom right one looks fucking chaotic. Alright. So, from afar, yeah, so I can see just pure failure with blocking out big sections of shadow and light with the first the one at lower right, one lower left, the middle one. That's okay. So maybe we can darken it over, continue just this darkness. It's not so bad looking from afar though. Yeah. Alright, so definitely the most powerful one is this upper right one. So let's look back at our lesson here. The main goals of this lesson was to teach us that we need to work with shapes in perspective, to work with them in atmospheric perspective, to understand the shape contrast or differences in shapes, to have overlapping shapes, and then work with light dark light. Light dark light kind of relates to Marco Bucci's first episode, Marco Bucci's tutorial. So we can see here that light dark light is obviously present in our upper right sketch, and I'd say the upper left sketch also kind of looks similar with the light dark light. We could have had it here if I was a little more careful. The chaos that we fell into here, we do have the perspective actually. The more I look at it, perspective is right. Atmospheric perspective is, it's not great, it's okay. Light, actually it's just one shape of light and two shapes of dark. That's not too bad actually. Actually this is, yeah, the more I look at it actually, the more I'm liking it. Maybe yeah, actually even if I maybe, yeah, no, maybe let's work on it just a little bit more. If I put something shadowy right here, right, and it climbs up and casts a shadow here, in this kind of area. Just for example. Maybe that's a little chaotic, but let's just give it a shot. Let's give it a try. As if they're kind of linked together. Let's beat those edges down again. They're just too sharp. They're just too sharp. That's straight up looking better actually. Kinda tells us like there's another thing. That's just as if the camera was sitting on the thing that is supposed to be casting this shadow on the right. The shape's a little fucking weird, but so if I squint, we kind of do have now just 2 areas of shadow and 2 areas of light, and it's not so bad actually. I just wonder, right? What if we did this? Let's pull that back. That straight up just looks better, I think. Alright. So let's work on it a little more. Something like that, right? Yeah, that definitely looks better. And just make a thing that goes up here, maybe slightly. Tell us that there's a shape there. Yeah, that definitely looks better. Alright, so we've kind of redeemed the lower right one actually. But what we have to do to make sure that looks legitimate is actually extend this entire fucking thing this way, right? Extend it this way, I'm thinking. Yeah, something like this. Now that looks convincing. 3-dimensional and interesting. Yeah. Okay, so we kind of redeemed it. So, atmospheric perspective, check. 1-point perspective, check. Something for the eye to follow, definitely check. We got this whole windy thing here. super interesting. Different shapes. I think they're kind of similar-ish, but not so bad. What else do we have? What else were in the lessons? Different shapes covering each other. We definitely have that. Light, dark, light, definitely strong. Yeah. I think we succeeded in this exercise. So we're gonna go on lunch break. I'll restart the stream later after lunch so we can all join. So this will be part one of the practice. So we're definitely gonna take lunch break, relax, and then go for part two if after a bit. So this has been 365 days learn art professionally. Day 2 for fundamentals. So I'm forgetting to do something. So everybody grab your notebooks. We're gonna list down. Remember, we were gonna make a checklist for things to take, fundamentals to take a look at in case your art is looking weird and trying to figure out why. So remember, the first one was from Marco Bucci. Can I have merged my shapes using light and shadow to simplify my image and remove fragmented values? The next one is do I properly use light, dark, light, and overlapping shapes? With different shape contrast and atmospheric perspective, with diff shape contrast and both atmospheric perspective and regular perspective. Overlapping shape, and do I use do I have a path for my eye to follow? Do I have a path for my eye to follow? So basically, once we're done with all the fundamentals, we're gonna review this checklist, brainstorm it, and condense it into a few questions that we can just go through the next time we're looking at pieces of art that we have that don't look super great. So this has been me. Enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. For now, I hope you learned something. I hope I learned something as well, and I'll catch you later for part 2 of this stream. We're gonna still take a look at more info on shapes for the second part of this stream. So thank you very much for tuning in, and see you next time. Bye.